it is. And so it is. And so here we are midweek for our tune-up, for our refreshment, just to check in, see where we are, and release and let go of whatever it is we find is not working for ourselves, and then breathe deeply and open up to what does through the divine guidance of Spirit and its inspiration. And so this morning in my spiritual reading, I came across a lovely little article in one of the Unity magazines. And it's talking about, the harvest, the fields are white with harvest. The fields are white with harvest, ready for the reaping, ready for the intake of that abundance. And of course, the fields, are the fields of our minds. And the fields of our minds are always ripe with harvest. But you and I have to reap the harvest, do we not? And so the thing is, to be able to live from that perspective, you have to tend, of course, to the fields every day. And you have to be good with where the fields are in every season. And so sometimes there's a season of tilling and digging and preparing the land. And then there's sowing and caring and tending to what we have sowed. And then there is the appearance of growth. And then there's weeding and things like that to do so that whatever we're sown has room to really flourish and thrive and not be choked up by weeds. And then the moment of harvest comes. And with joy, we gather it in. We gather it in with joy. And of course, when Jesus is talking about such things, he speaks in metaphors because people understand stories and metaphors better than great theological speeches. And he is certainly talking about you and I being a field of potential harvest. We are an energy field of potential harvest. But we have to till it, we have to sow it, we have to plant, we have to tend to, we have to weed, and so on. And then we will reap the harvest. And so if you look at our immediate lives, and you take a hard and fast and deep look at it all, there are some things that we're liking, some things maybe we're not liking, some things we're delighted with, and some things that kind of niggle us. And that would be the harvest for you and for me to work in. And I can remember the story, one of the stories that they tell great unity stories about different people who have different problems. Well, one of them is about a chemist, a pharmacist, and he had a pharmacy store. And he was doing okay, but as time went on, he was getting a little bit, sort of fed up with it all and thinking there might be something better out there for me. There might be a better business for me to go into. And so he began to spend time looking into the business that might be there for him or something else he could do that would make him happier or whatever. And in the meantime, he wasn't that committed to his own pharmacy and business because he was preoccupied with all of this. But in time, he realized, I'm not getting anywhere, and my business, the business that I have, is suffering. So then one moment, he had this great insight. Well, why don't I focus on what I have? See what I can do with that. See if I can make this a better business. And maybe in the making it a better business, I can expand the business. Instead of one pharmacy, I could have 2 pharmacies. And he began to get excited about it. He began to think about that harvesting and that working the harvest. And he began to work the harvest of his business, began to work the business. And eventually the business perked up and he had another pharmacy on the way. And he became very engrossed in this activity and was enthused about his work and inspired in his work. And that person was the originator of the Walgreen group of pharmacies. See what persistence will do. See what tending to the harvest will do. Even if your first crop is a very small one, if you really put your all into it, tend to it well, you'll grow a bigger crop next year, and so on, until you don't have just one field to harvest, you'll have many. So what was it for this man? He had a sudden insight. He thought, well, this I know is sure. I have this business and this is a sure thing and I have it. And maybe I'm not being fair to it. And I certainly haven't been putting my all into it of late. So he retraced his steps. He got the beginner's mind again and he threw himself into it. And as he did, as the tension released itself from him, as the disgruntlement released itself from him, as his discontent faded, guess what? He was inspired. He got more creative. And he branched out in his own pharmacy to begin with in many other different ways. And as you know, Walgreens today, they're not just pharmacies. You can get all kinds of things in them. So I'm asking us, what in our lives are we a little bit fed up with at the moment, discontent with, things that is okay and we're doing all right with them, but we're not really one with the process? What would that be? Because that would be something for us to take on as a project. I always say we don't have problems, we have projects. See every problem as a project. Where is it that you and I could shine a greater light on whatever it is, or a little bit, ambivalent even at the least about? Where could we provide more? Because in the providing of more, you'll gain a huge result. A little bit of effort can bring about a great result. Little bit of effort can trigger a great result. And I'm sure there's not one of us that couldn't find some little area in our lives where we couldn't put in a little bit more attention and care and consideration and appreciation. I'm sure of it. The harvest within you is always white and ready for reaping. Always. Now, Jesus called it in another way, the kingdom within you. The harvest he was talking about is the kingdom within you, the kingdom of infinite possibility. In you, yes, you. Yes, you. Infinite possibility. But you have to work it. It's your field of work. And if you don't work it, it goes fallow. That's a hard way to live. So whatever is good in your life, work it, tend it, appreciate it, grow it, expand it to the point that you have so much you can share from it easily, happily, joyously, instead of thinking, well, can I do this? Can I do that? Will I have enough? If I give that there, will there be enough for here? And so on. And not be tentative about our sharing. No matter how little it is or how big it is. To do it with that sense of, my harvest is great. It's great, and I can't deplete it. And it's so good, I have fantastic seeds that I can grow even a better crop for next year's harvest. It's the attitude. It all boils down to your attitude and mine with regard to life and how we show up in it, you know. If we're showing up limping and moaning and disgruntled, it's not going to be a great harvest. It might be enough, but it's not going to be a great harvest. But if we throw ourselves at it and into it, no matter how we're feeling, take the energy, whatever the energy is in a day, and use it well. Use it well, not be like the chap in the scripture that buried his talent and lost it and was punished for losing it. If we don't use it, you know the rest. Yeah, we lose it. And so, my dear ones, I'm asking us all today to have a look at ourselves and see, are we squandering our harvest in any way? Are we neglecting our harvest in any way? Are we depleting our harvest in ways that we don't need to deplete it? What are we doing with the harvest that we are, the good that we are, the infinite potential that we are? What are we doing with it? Are we sitting on our derrieres and not doing much of anything? And then what is our attitude? Because it's all boiling down to attitude. The way I get up in the morning, and I was just talking about that early on with Ruthie here, and I always have something or another that I'm going to wake up the first thing I realize I'm awake and say, so that I can set my day on the right course. And one of my favorites is, this is the day that life and light and love and peace and beauty and power have made, and I am glad and I rejoice in them, and I go forward to meet them all, greet them all, and be them all. Or I might say, well, the infinite chose to wake up in me today, so I'm going to choose to wake up in the infinite. It varies. It varies. But the first thing you do when you open your eyes, for heaven's sake, let it be something that is affirmative and of light energy. Oh, it's day again, instead of, good God, it's day again. You see, because that sets your attitude for the whole day, your first thoughts, your first feelings on awakening. Be glad and rejoice no matter what. Be glad and rejoice in some even small way no matter what faces you in the day. And then say, I will not be afraid, for Spirit goes before me and prepares the way for me to move into my good. To move into my good. Spirit goes before me, makes the rough ways, if there's going to be a rough thing ahead of you in the day that you know about, to make the rough ways smooth, the crooked ways straight, so that I can go and move from grace to grace and good to good, advancement to advancement. It's all in how you perceive it. It's all in how you see it, how you feel about it. That sets the tone of your day. Never wake up and say, oh, this is a difficult day. This is going to be a tough day. Never do that. And when you do, say, cancel that, because you were asleep when you said it. Even if you're walking around, you're asleep when you say things like that. Say, no, I cancel that. The truth is, and then you affirm the opposite. Oh, my dear ones, living a great good life boils down to bread and butter stuff. Simple. As you think it, so it is. As you feel it, so it is. As you say it, so it is. You're right. Ford used to say that to his workers. If you think it's wrong, it's wrong. If you think it's right, he would tell them. And you know that because sometimes people have tried to convince you that what you thought was right was wrong. And others have tried to convince you that what you thought was wrong was right. And there's no one to convince you with any kind of degree of intelligence except yourself. You need to convince you of what's right for you, what's good for you. No one else. And you know people, and I know people who are always looking for your opinion of something or another. And you may very nicely and kindly give your opinion, And then you know they're just going to go and do whatever they're going to go and do themselves. They're not going to pay the slightest bit of attention to your opinion. They're just these constant seekers of opinion. Seek opinion, all right, but seek it from within yourself. And when you tell yourself something, ask yourself, well, now, is this right? Is this true? Do I feel really good about this? You do the Byron Katie thing. Is this true? Is this absolutely true? Is it absolutely true? And if you don't get an answer that says yes, then you rethink. Because very little is true. Absolutely. Most is opinion. A good guess. A perhaps. There's only one truth. It's a whole, it's a complete thing. And it never disappoints, never harms anything or anyone, especially yourself. It only leads you along the path of good, and only good, the truth. That's why we say it sets us free from what? Opinion. Number one, our own, and number two, everybody else's. Now, that's not to say you might hear something, it could be anywhere, in passing with someone, on the television, radio, in a movie, any which way it comes to us in the outer world. We may hear something that triggers something within us that strikes home as being true and inspires us. That can happen anytime, and it's usually spontaneous. You can get the same aha moment from a book, a seminar, a class, whatever, a child. But remember, at the end of the day, you and you alone make up your own mind about whatever, and not be sucked up in the group mentality, whether it's the family group or the work group or the peer group or whatever. Make up your own mind. Be in your own mind. Think in your own mind, through your own mind, and decide from your own mind. Let it be authentically you. No matter how convincing somebody else might be that this is what you need to do, be, say, whatever. No one knows that except you. But you won't know it from the egoic mind. You have to go deeper than that. You have to go into yourself. It would be more correct to say you have to go out from yourself, because the human body is contained within the spiritual body that you are. And the spiritual body that you are has no boundaries. That's how infinite the presence in you is. So your body is within the body of the cosmic beingness that you are. So it's more correct to say you need to go out of your physical body, your human body, into the vast arena of your essential essence. And that's why we say, now let's go within, into that vast, endless energy. The going within really is to allow yourself to be part of all of that cosmic, oceanic feeling and power. And so it doesn't take much. You don't have to read a bazillion difficult books to get there. All you have to do is have simple faith. Not blind faith, simple faith. Faith in the one who chose to know itself by means of you. So a body appeared so it could enter into that body as you and experience and express itself as you. That's what you are. No less than that. No less than that. And the next time you pass by somebody lying in the street with a brown paper bag beside them, out for the count, or lying disheveled somewhere, look at that body and say, I know what you are, and it's not this. And I am knowing for you that you're going to know it too. And this is what you're going to know, that you are the amazing, essential, infinite cell of the divine being. And without you, we couldn't be. That's who you are. That's what you are. And I'm knowing you're going to awaken into that. Because that's the way life unfolds. And that's the way evolution occurs. So that's who you are, and I'm saluting it. And don't feel sorry or pity for someone. Feel strong for them. Empower them by recognizing their truth. And then if you're moved to do something, you know? Do something. And I'll close with reminding you of the great multimillionaire that was once, years ago, I saw being interviewed on television. I don't remember who it was. And they said, what do you attribute all your good to? And he says, well, I've always endeavored and continue to say yes to whatever, if I can. And then that reminded me of the universe always says yes. So if a need crossed his path, he always endeavored to say yes, if he could. And that's a beautiful thing to aspire to. So I'm saluting all the great good within each and every one of you, and I know that much good has flown through your lives until this point now, and much more will continue to do that. And I know for you too that you can be the sweetness of spirit in its strength and in its power and in its dynamic and in its energy to be all that you can be. Isn't that wonderful? Yes, it is, and so are you. So now we're going to have the opportunity, because I've been given the light, to bless ourselves and be grateful for all the good in our lives and all the wonderful, wonderful aspects of our lives that we appreciate and have yet to appreciate, because it's very exciting when we discover something new about ourselves. It's really jazzy. And let's know that Spirit by you and Spirit by me wants to have a better experience every single moment of our lives if we provide the opportunity. So let's say we'll provide the opportunity today. So say with me right now, God by means of me is on the move, upward, forward, and onward, in good and only good. Now that's the truth. And so it is. And so it is. And so now we are going to celebrate the fullness that we have in our lives. Sometimes the fullness may be a small glass, very, very full. Sometimes it may be a huge bucket, very, very full. And sometimes it could be a flood. See? But whatever it is, we're seeing it as fullness, and that's the key. That's the key. And from that fullness, we know we always have enough. The enough is always plenty, from which we can happily and cheerily share. So let's take our gift between our hands and say, divine love consecrates my gift. It goes forth to heal, to bless, and to prosper. All those who give and all those who receive. I rejoice in the sharing of my good, and I release my gift with love. And so it is. And so it is, my dear ones, that we are now going to We are now going to bless ourselves before we go out there again, reconfirm that we are the gift that life is expecting in this day, and we're going out there to give that gift cheerily, happily, healthily, and well. That's what we're knowing. And it doesn't matter if the gift is a little bit or a great big bit. It doesn't matter the size. It's the energy with which you give. That's all that matters. Remember the widow's mite story in Scripture? Everybody else was going up there, pouring in all their pieces of gold and so on. This little lady hobbles up and she puts in the very last penny she has. And that's the one that Jesus really shone the light on. She gave what she had. And that's hard when you have so very little. And I'll leave you with the story about the woman which I shared with you before that was desperate. She didn't know how she was going to feed the children that evening. All the money was out, and she was so desperate. But she pulled herself back and remembered this teaching because she was in the teaching. So she remembered, okay, if I don't have much, I have to give what I can give. So she went out into a field and plucked a bunch of wild flowers, and she took them to an elderly lady down the road, and she gave them to her. And then she went back and she set the table. She didn't know what she was going to put on it, but she set the table in faith for supper that night. And that afternoon, the mail person came and delivered to her an envelope. And in the envelope, there was a check. And it was a check from somebody in her past whom she had done some good for. And they wanted to gift her with this large amount of money. And all was well. And that put her on her feet again. She was able to take care of herself and her 4 children ever after. So trust your source. And especially when there's not a shred of evidence. Not a shred of evidence to back up what you're believing and what you're knowing in faith. That's the time when you put your 2 feet firmly into that intention of yours and you say, it doesn't matter whether I feel it, whether I know it, whether I believe it or not, the truth is. And you state your truth. And I'll stick by that over and out. And by Jiminy Crickets, you just might amaze yourself. So we're going to know for everybody on the planet and for every living thing, and especially those who are struggling right here and right now in any way at all, most especially those in troubled lands who fear for their lives, cannot find the way to take care of their children and so on. That right in the midst of them, the one is, life is, and somehow or another, because of what we're knowing right now and the blessing we're sending their way, a light is dawning within them and filling them with that sense of hope that leads them through their challenges in their lives. Now, not of myself do I know this, but the Spirit within me does, and the Spirit goes forth to touch the Spirit within every one and trigger a response so that a light shines and movement forward occurs in some way. Now that's the truth. It's released into law. It is so, and so it is. And that's it for now, my dear ones. If some of you must go and be on your way, you can do that. Then if there is somebody who has a question that they want to ask, you may ask it and we'll see what we can do with it. Got a question, anybody? I just want to give anybody an opportunity who might have a question to ask a question, because sometimes we do, and it's not always we get the opportunity. But you kids are good to go, I can see. So up and at it. Get on, get out there and splash that light of yours all over the place. Heaven knows the world needs you. And I'll see you next time. And everybody who's tuned in, thank you for being in our company, and stay tuned in to all the other good things that are happening. And as for these beautiful people, well, I will see them later. Take care of yourselves and know we're here for you. Remember that. We're here for you however we can. and we love you. And we're grateful for all you do in the world.